We're talking about the transition from if you wanted to be a police officer, what would you have to go through? And I'm not really talking about selling you on becoming a police officer. What I'm really talking about is understanding the training that police officers go through so that we can identify some of the problems in the system we have right now. How to become a police officer from a private citizen. You're on your couch and you want to become a police officer. We're going to discuss the steps that it takes for you to do that transition so that you're a private citizen today. What actually would you have to do in order to get to fully fledged police officer ready to handle a 911 call? So I'm not sure how many people appreciate the magnitude of the skills required to actually become a police officer. And the mental shift that it takes to go from watching stuff on the news to being the one in the car that's going to the live event, that's a big transition to make for a 19, 20-year-old kid. And so I guess technically when you're talking about transitioning from civilian to police officer, there's probably like 5 or 6 steps. In fact, I got that in outline format. I'm going to share that with you guys right now. See a few of you guys checking in here. I got a few watchers. Let me know in the comments where you're coming from. Let me know. So if we're talking about just becoming a police officer and the mandatory steps that it takes, the first thing you have to do is you just have to attend the police academy. And from state to state, that's going to change depending on what type of requirements they have. But it's generally going to be about 6 months long. Some type of 6 months long, either live-in academy or college-based academy that's pretty intensive. So that's the first thing you got to do. You got to pass the academy. Then we're going to scroll down. The next yellow thing we're going to look at is you got to pass the state exam. So the academy class I just got done teaching about a week or so ago, they took the state exam, 200 multiple choice question test. They had about a week or so to prepare for it after the academy class was done. And I took one of the tests, a practice test they had, and I ended up getting 17 wrong out of, I think it was 15, 16 wrong, 17 wrong out of 126 questions. It was basic police stuff. The stuff that I got wrong was the ethics and morals. Not that I don't have ethics and morals, but defining the difference between the two, that's a little bit more complicated. Okay, but so we've taken the academy class and we've passed it. We passed the state exam. Now you still aren't sworn law enforcement because you've got to be hired. You've got to be hired by a police department. You've got to pass their background investigation and do all their agency-specific training. So now you're about 7, 8 months in and you haven't even put on a uniform yet. So you have the traditional police academy that's taught by, in this particular case, we're talking about a state college. And once you're done with the state college police academy and you get hired by the police department, many of them have an additional 6, 7, 8, 10 weeks, 14 weeks of classroom type training to review their policies and procedures, to review their radio codes, to review all the type of stuff that you would do onboarding into a new job. And then in addition to that, we've got to actually take that police academy knowledge and put it to use in the road. And that's a really difficult transition. I think that's part where the problem lies in. And we'll attack that a little bit later though. So yeah, you got to get to that agency specific training. That's going to be broken out in a couple different stages there. Stage 1 would be the classroom training. Stage 2 is going to be the field training officer program. I think everybody kind of knows about that, where, you know, the training officer is riding the passenger seat or the driver's seat, depending on where they're at in the stage. And they're responding to calls, and it's a mentor-mentee relationship. And there's multiple phases of that. So as the police officer in training proceeds through the field training program, the shift of balance there starts to twitch or starts to transition, where the field training officer is taking on less of a role in handling calls than the other officer is. Finally, I guess that makes you sworn. Once you complete the field training officer program, you're going to be done. You're going to be on the road as a full service police officer in a probationary status. There's also kind of have this probationary period where they're supposed to have a supervisor do additional monitoring of you for the next couple of months. In my experience, that doesn't really happen. Once you pass FTO, you're off on your own, you're good to go. Everything else is just checking the box and making sure you don't get fired while you're still in your probationary period, or don't do anything stupid while you're still in your probationary period so you don't get fired. But just because you're a full service police officer, you got the badge, you got the gun, and you're driving around in a car by yourself, you're done with training, that doesn't mean that you have full control or full access to your career options at that point in time, because most police departments are not going to let their one-year officers do specialized positions. They say, hey, work the road for a year, and then we'll open up some availability for you to go to a specialized unit. But the core of work in the road, or the core of police work, is work in the road. You got to learn that first. And so the last agency that I worked at, the sheriff's office, pretty big agency, they had it where after 1 year, you could apply for part-time positions after you completed the field training officer program. And then after 2 years, you could apply for any of the full-time positions like a sex crimes investigator or whatever. Now, there's a natural flow to that, of course, so you wouldn't jump straight from road deputy all the way up into sex crimes. There's a couple different ways to actually get into the police academy. You apply for it in your own, whatever, or you can go through a sponsorship. So you can apply for it on your own, just like you apply for college. You pay everything out of your pocket, $2,500, $3,000, whatever the academy's going to cost. And you are just an attendee going. You got to meet their qualifications. But the other way to go is that you are hired by a police department first, and the police department sponsors you into the academy, and you're going through this training process while being paid as a trainee. And it's about 50-50. Everybody in the police academy that doesn't have a job, they're looking for a job while they're in the police academy because everybody wants a position when they get out. Put a lot on hold for this, and this is a long, long process. This is what's being taught in Florida. It's a 622 pages, probably 600 pages once you take out all the nonsense. And then we have a table of contents. You can get a pretty good idea of what we're actually teaching the police officers just by reviewing the table of contents of the material that they're being taught. And this first chapter, we're talking about an introduction to law enforcement. They get trained in values, ethics, sexual harassment, chain of command, those core structure principles of law enforcement at the helm. And then we go into the legal section of the police academy, where they're taught about the Fourth Amendment, the legal, just how the laws came to be, how we came up with English common law, how statutory law, the supremacy clause, which laws supersede other laws, the arrest powers, Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. The police officers are given a 2-week section on case law, Bill of Rights, constitutional law, statutory law, and it's just the tip of the iceberg, but it's pretty in-depth. The academy that I teach at has an attorney out of local jurisdiction. He's a former prosecutor. He comes in and teaches the 2-week legal block. It's pretty dry. I'm glad I'm not the one that has to teach it. But nonetheless, there's a lot of segments in there that are good stuff on teaching core concepts of the Bill of Rights. And I hope to really get into that in future videos and future live streams. We're now in chapter 2. We're looking down below. Let's look down to that legal concepts. And there we're looking at search and seizure, weapons and firearms possession, use of force, and laws of interrogation. And these units go pretty in depth into core police officer mindset, core police officer training. And the material is done really well. This material is just the first couple of weeks of the police academy. And I always hated teaching the first couple of weeks because the academy that I went to, the Florida Highway Patrol, was a live-in academy. We had to go there, very, very militaristic. It was like 20 weeks of basic training as opposed to 8 weeks of basic training. We're talking about strict meals, not allowed to talk, waking up at the crack of dawn, going on long runs, a lot of brainwashing into, you're the best, live a higher lifestyle, values, ethics. They did a really good job of beating that into your head. Maybe too much, but that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. The point is, there was a lot of information coming at me all at once, and it was this military mindset going on, and it's impossible to retain that kind of information based upon that type of flow. So here we have all these students being taught in this paramilitary type environment in the first few weeks. They don't know what's going on. As an instructor, I walk into that And they're so paying attention to what's going on around them and worried about doing push-ups that it's hard to break through to their brain. So that first few weeks of the police academy, it's like, man, you're talking to a brick wall because in one ear, out the other, just bouncing off. They're worried about getting in trouble. We're talking about the transition from, if you wanted to be a police officer, what would you have to go through? And I'm not really talking about selling you on becoming a police officer. What I'm really talking about is understanding the training that police officers go through so that we can identify some of the problems in the system we have right now. And we get to spotlight these cases where people are shot and people die, but there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases every single week where rights are violated without any mention in the media. And these are the types of situations that it's your neighbor, it's you, it's the guy at your church. Did you guys see that guy, that pastor was arrested? I think it was in Moscow, Idaho, for seeing a church sermon or church song outside. You never know when you're going to be put in a situation that you're going to have to interact with the police, especially in today's crazy times. And for you to understand what the police officers go through in training and the process that it takes to get them from A to Z and where they're at in the process, that's going to help you in your interaction with them. If you're dealing with a 6-month police officer who just got off training and you're on a traffic stop, your behavior and their behavior is going to be drastically different if you're dealing with some crusty old timer that's working day shift out in the suburbs. So your ability to understand who you're interacting with while you're protecting your rights and while you're holding others accountable, the police accountable for their actions, is important. All right, I should have it up and running now. We've talked about some of these different concepts that happen in the police, or some of these teaching principles that happen in the police academy. These are the topic headings there. There's another area of the police academy as well, besides the standard academic topics we just discussed, and that's the high liability areas. The police departments have identified, or the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, I guess, identified 4 areas that really need to be structured well and that are the most likely for a police officer to cause themselves trouble or cause the public trouble. And those high liability areas are firearms, vehicle operations, first aid, and defensive tactics. Firearms, vehicle operations, first aid, and defensive tactics. And if you're going to teach at the police academy, you require a general purpose instructor permit. But if you're going to teach these high liability topic areas that the departments and the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and agencies in general have identified as being of greater risk, you've got to receive additional instructor certifications. Now, for instance, my instructor certification is a general instructor. I'm also a DUI instructor, but that doesn't matter for the police academy purposes. Let me switch this over real quick. I am also a defensive tactics instructor, but I haven't taught defensive tactics, also known as DT, in a long time. Because although I'm certified by the state of Florida to teach ground fighting, there are so many jiu-jitsu black belts and all kinds of stuff out there right now that could totally destroy me that are much better positioned to teach than I am. So one of the benefits about the college where I teach at, the police academy there, the Criminal Justice Institute, they are really good about finding experts in their field to teach the police officers. So in firearms, they got top-notch shooters. They got top-notch guys teaching this stuff. They got SWAT guys. These guys know how to shoot. They know how to teach people how to shoot. And for DUI, they have me teaching DUI. They have a criminal defense attorney teaching the DUI block at the academy. Now, I've been teaching out there a long time, but they've picked an expert. That's the point. And because they're picking experts in their field, you know that the police officers are getting quality information into their head at the academy level. So where does that break down? That becomes the question. Let's get back on track here. So we talked about the high liabilities. We talked about that they got to be taught high liabilities, that these high liabilities topics are specific chapters in the book that require a lot of additional attention. Each chapter is tested on with an academic test, but these high liability areas have academic tests as well as hands-on applications. I can't see the chat box right now where we're at, but I got nobody chatting because it's way too early in the morning. Appreciate all 9 of you guys being here. Thank you. Learning how to do this, there's so much to say, and I appreciate your feedback and comments. I'm looking forward to getting to know you guys and improving these live streams. Hopefully you guys like the setup back here, getting things done up. Let me know if you have any questions too. I mean, I'm talking about things that I think are important, but a lot of times I don't know what you don't know, because a lot of the stuff I just assume that everybody has an idea about. All right, so let's get back here. So we're talking about high liabilities training, requires special instructor certification. Let's get into firearms a little bit. During the academy, the recruits are given blue rubber guns. So they wear a police belt for all their training. They get their blue rubber guns, and then they go out to the range. Here, they go out to the local sheriff's office, who supplies the guns, the range time, as well as the ammunition. I'm sure the college has some type of payment thing, but it all happens at the local law enforcement agency. And the officers in training are taught basic firearms marksmanship, basic sight picture, trigger control, all the same stuff they teach in the military, basic firearms 101. Then they escalate the training and start including live fire drills, stress drills, malfunction drills, reload drills, offhand techniques, officer down rescue. And they really start to get advanced even at a really early stage. Those stress courses are a lot of fun, but it can be a little bit intimidating for a new police officer coming through. Qualification course for police is pretty easy. You got to qualify, I think, twice a year. Defensive tactics has been a huge switch in law enforcement here recently, because what actually works is not being trained. Like that rear naked choke, putting somebody out and taking them unconscious, is a really good technique that should be used in law enforcement. It's a great way to de-escalate. But so much attention has been brought about the neck, vascular neck restraints, and there is a degree of danger with it. So, I mean, it's not always good, but man, that's a really good technique that if you know what you're doing and you can put somebody to sleep with that real quick, I don't know why we're not using it. I don't know why. It's more perception than anything else. Police officers should be allowed to use that as a technique. But let me know your thoughts on that. That's a really interesting one, because that one is one we have in the media here recently. You know, so I think we should be using it, but I think it's something they should be trained on better. The driving training, police guys, is pretty cool. So with a lot of things, there's a few minutes of really good, sexy stuff, and then there's a lot of boring stuff. And that's kind of how driving is. A lot of the driving drills you do are backing up. Most police cars or most accidents at law enforcement agencies are done while backing. You drive forward 5,000 miles a year, you back up a half a mile, and that's where you get all your actions, that 1/2 of a mile. So a lot of the backing, or a lot of the training in regards to vehicle operations and law enforcement is as simple as looking over your shoulder and clearing to the rear before you actually put it in reverse. There's a lot of fun stuff, though, with collision avoidance, where you drive down straight between two cones. You got to get up to certain miles per hour, 35, 45 miles per hour. And then as you're driving, someone in front of you points left or points right, and they're outside the car and they have an arrow, and you have to make a last second decision, and you got to adjust your wheel to fit within a cone space. And if you do it too fast, what ends up happening is your back wheels will break traction. You end up spinning out and going around. So, of course, after you do it the right way, you get it figured out. We had some fun, and you mess around with it, you see how fast you can go. So there's a lot of advantages that law enforcement have with driving abilities that the regular public probably doesn't have. For instance, median crossings. When I was a trooper, one of the things we would do as part of our driving training is I would take the trainees to the center median on one of the major highways over here, 417, if you guys live in Orlando, and I would get them up to 80, 90 miles an hour, 100 miles an hour, and I'd say cross the median and go the other direction. And the ability to hit the grass at that speed, slow down without losing control, and spin the car around and get back into other traffic, one, it's a lot of fun. And two, it's really good training. Torn up a couple cars that way, gotten stuck plenty of times, had some training to spin the car out, almost got hit. There's been a lot of things that have happened crazy with it. But that training right there has saved my life on more than one occasion, because when you go off the road, you got to make sure to keep the tires straight so you don't create a trip hazard. But I wouldn't have really learned that if I didn't do that type of training over and over. I didn't teach the police officers in my patrol car how to do it. I guess I shouldn't say police officers, they were state troopers. Hey, Glenn, I don't understand. Clarify your question there. I will talk about a difference between the military as well as law enforcement. The difference. I was a military police officer at Fort Bragg, and then I got out and did construction for a little while, and then switched over to the Highway Patrol. And hey, good morning, Grape Ape. Good seeing you. And I got my coffee. Got my coffee right here too. If you want to be a police officer, the steps are really easy from the outside. You say, hey, just go to the police academy. It's about 6 months long. Once you get done with the police academy, which is all these steps right here, all these sub steps, then you just got to pass a test. Written test, not too hard. You should be able to pass it if you take the police academy. Then you got to get hired, so that's going to be a big step in the process. Background selection, personality test, psychological exam, polygraph test. Got some stories about that we can talk about someday too. And then we got to talk about your agency training that you're going to have to go through once you get hired. And that's going to be another police academy for 8 or 9 weeks. Then you have to go through the field training officer process. And then once you're done with that, you're going to go where you're kind of hands off in this probationary period. And then after another 6 months, you'll have about a year on the road, and you'll be able to transition into some of their part-time programs. So that's the general steps to become a police officer from A to Z. So once we get there, we can start talking about some of the problems we're having in law enforcement. And like Dinky says, a lot of the officers are having issues with de-escalation and escalation. And I think where you have an issue there is at the police academy, everything is trained proper or done according to the book. And when you get to the road and you start the field training officer program, I'm guilty of this as well. So I'm not pointing fingers at other people. It's kind of like, hey, forget what you learned in the academy. I'm going to show you how to be a police officer now. And that's a problem. But it's real. You guys know the training you get in an academic setting just doesn't compare to what goes on really in the streets. And so there's this disconnect here. It's not just in civilian law enforcement, it's everywhere. So trying to overcome that disconnect. One of the ways to talk about that disconnect is talking about the military, difference between the military police as well as the civilian police and law enforcement, civilian law enforcement side. Spent that time at Fort Bragg as a military police officer. Because Fort Bragg is kind of one of these hardcore bases, I mean, it's not one of those places that they really need protection, I guess. We got Delta Force, we got all kinds of crazy people there that would kill people in a heartbeat. So there's not a lot of protection. But nonetheless, while I was there, I was a combat and a regular garrison MP is what they call it. So I would transition between a law enforcement realm for 1 month and then a training/deployment cycle next month. And then the next month I would be on standby for anywhere in the world in 24 hours, kind of our mission. My experience in law enforcement in the military was drastically different than people who went to a more, I was going to say lame, but more laid back base that did full-time garrison work. So those military police officers may have had a different experience than I had, because what I had as a military police officer was nothing, and I mean nothing, like being a civilian cop. The amount of discretion that you have as a civilian police officer blows away any discretion I ever had as a military police officer. Now, that may be because as a military police officer, I didn't, at 19 years old, walking in, I didn't have the training or the knowledge to do it. So maybe that's part of the problem. They just had strict controls over it. But either way. So let me get into this. We got some questions in the live stream or live chat, and I want to talk to you guys. Got 12 people showing. Thanks for showing up, guys. I appreciate it. Early Sunday morning. Okay, you're doing good. You're good. You're a lawyer for officials or the people. I'm not for anything. I want America to be better. I'm a criminal defense attorney. I represent people. I tend to represent the down guy. That's where it always tends to be, the underdog. And I don't know how that's come to be, but now I'm just taking that out. And whoever needs help, I'll help police officers. I'll help criminal defenders. I'll help judges. I just want a set of rules that we can follow, that we can have some principles that we can train these police officers by so we know what to expect. We are stepping away from the constitutional principles we have, and I want to educate people, all people, on those principles so we can get back to them and try to get America back on track. So, all right, contempt of cop rage, complete defeat, de-escalate. Yeah. Contempt of cop, man. I've got a video. This is Great Babe's comment right here. I've got a video and I got permission to release it. It is a trial I lost. And I did another video on this trial. It's a POP arrest, what I call POP, pissing off the police. That one might call some people out because the person arrested was a criminal defense attorney. I know her fairly well. She was arrested for resisting without violence. And her resisting without violence was she was told to get out of the car, and she didn't get out of the car fast enough. That's why she got charged with resisting without violence. She has her ways about her. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that. But she is so principled that although she was given a sweetheart deal, that she stood her ground and said, Jeff, we got to fight this all the way through. And we did it. We lost. And the jury actually came back with some questions on that case. Man, that was a really bad loss. I can't wait to play that trial for you guys. I can't wait to play that trial for you guys. So let's get back to the comment, ask a couple more questions, then I'm going to get into back to the topic. Happens with nurses too. Yeah, I lost what part you're talking about with nurses there, but I think when you talk about first responders in general, you have these training issues where they make the front page news a lot of times with the police because we're running into it and it just makes the news. But you're talking about complex decision making in an emergency room is the same thing as complex decision making on a scene of an active shooter. Yeah, I've definitely been in an emergency room where you have a guy getting a traction splint put on his femur who's screaming so loud because they can't give him drugs, and you have the guy next to him getting CPR done on him, and the doctor's trying to save his life. So yeah, all the first responder people are going to have issues with this type of thing where the training that they teach you in the academy or the training they teach you in the nursing school is going to be a lot different than what happens in real world. They're all military police. I've been robbed by the police, warrantless arrested 3 times, 7 cars. Some good cops. Now I know some good cops. Yes, trained. Yeah. So Lawrence Lowe, let's talk about that. So Lawrence Lowe says, I've been robbed by the cops, warrantless arrest 3 times, towed cars, 5 cars stolen, cops did nothing, and no one goes on. I need help. Yeah. I don't know where you're coming from. I don't know if you're in an area or a city or a municipality where there's bad relationship with the police. You said your car's gotten stolen 5 times. I'm guessing you're living in some type of environment that has a problem with juvenile crime. So we're talking about car theft is usually drug or juvenile related. And with the COVID stuff going on and school being out and all this virtual stuff, we would expect to see a spike in stolen vehicles. Happens every year during the summer when school lets out. So the problem with stolen vehicles, at least in my experience, is that they're really difficult to prove and they're really difficult to convict. And because of that, the police departments don't put a whole lot of effort into it because really, although it's your car and that's really important, it's just a glorified theft. And so to steal your iPhone, are they really going to find your iPhone, prosecute who stole it? Probably not, because it switches hands so many times. And I think that runs into a similar issue when you talk about stolen cars. You know, to dust prints in a stolen car, unless you got like a murder suspect and you're going to have somebody process this this car with the degree of complexity that a crime scene investigator would. I know your situation, Lawrence, man. I hope you have a better interaction with the police. 90% good people out there, they get tied in bad situations. Is it true that police use the milligrams experiment to ensure officers will follow? What is that? Which one is that? Milligram. I may know the facts of it, but I don't know the name. So is that like one of the Pavlov, one of the dog ones, or is that mice? Let me know that, Parent Dome. Let's break down into some of these different areas while we got you here and talk about the different aspects a little bit more deep. We talked about the high liability topics already and the instructor certifications and some of the things that go along with this. Actually, you know what's fascinating about this COVID stuff, I actually said it, the COVID stuff with the police academy. I was set to teach at the police academy the day all this stuff broke out, like the week it broke out. And I went out there and didn't know what we were doing. We had to adapt though. So I taught a lot out there during this COVID crisis. And a couple days they shut down the college and we had to go out to the sheriff's office to a training section out at the range. Now, it's my understanding that the administrators wanted to be shut down altogether. But if you're a police executive, think back to March. If you're a police executive, you're the chief of police or you're the sheriff or you're the, some type of high level police executive, and you are facing COVID in March, and you're talking about numbers of death rates, 20, 30%, you've got to have a backfill of police officers coming to replace it because you've got to be prepared to lose 20 or 30% of your workforce. So they couldn't shut down the academy because they needed the backfill of people to come through. And it really spotlighted the expendability. The expendability. Hey, sorry guys, we're here right now. It's because a lot of cops might die from COVID. And a lot of cops have. So at the police academy, every morning they do a Pledge of Allegiance, and then they read out loud. I got this on audio. I've recorded a few different times. It's a very strict military environment, the police academy. So if you walk in, instructor on deck, everybody's at attention, and they stand there quietly till you tell at ease, and formal reading the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody stands up at attention, faces the flag together in uniform on command. And after that, if there's any line of duty deaths, they read them from the officer down memorial page. Actually, you guys probably don't even know about that. That's a really good one. Hey, Sean, how you doing? Give me a shout out where you guys are coming from. Let me get back in the comments. I want to show you guys down that officer down. I want to show you that officer down memorial page. You can take a look at where they read that from. Hit the help. Yeah. Hit that thumbs up button. Thanks, great. Hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe to the channel. I appreciate it, guys. I've been at the police academy now teaching this is my 10-year award. I think I got this in 2018. So add that on there. Yeah, I think I started teaching at this particular college in 2008 or 2009. Got that a few years ago. So really got a chance to understand and dive deep into understanding police work from a large-scale perspective of understanding the problem, looking from an agency and seeing where the manpower needs to go, all the way down to the microscopic level of teaching a police officer how to go take that guy right there that's big and mean and ugly and take him to jail with him being cooperative. It's a really interesting position to be in. It affords me a lot of valuable opportunities in criminal defense, I'll tell you that. Whenever these officers step out of line on the stand, boom, I got them. But then you got to test out, are the officers going to lie? Because when you catch the officers on the stand, they have a decision to make. They can go with it. Yeah, I agree. I got it. I was wrong. Whatever. I misspoke. However, whatever the attack is, they're going to be passive, admit their mistake. But police officers are generally type A personalities that like to win and have a competitive spirit. And chances are the person I'm defending did what the officer said wrong or something close, or it is perceived by that officer that way, whether it's true or not. So whether my guy actually did the offense or not doesn't matter for that purpose, because in the officer's mind, he did. And so if I get that guy out of trouble, at that point in time, I'm the bad guy. So the officer generally, and me too, when I was a police officer too, I did the same thing. You want to win. You want to win. And so when you're challenged with situations like that, it's very, very difficult in the courtroom as well as in the street to back down away from the challenge and be the bigger man and get the better result. And that's part of what we need to teach here. We want aggressive cops. We want safe neighborhoods. We just want those really strict boundaries that these police officers know they have to operate within. The way we get those, I think, is through the judiciary. I think the judges are listening to these motions. You've heard these motions I put online. There's other attorneys put these cross-examination motions online. I'm not the only one. These judges are hearing these motions, knowing the police officer is full of crap and saying, well, he said they were sick, ill, or impaired, so that's enough to pull them out, or that's enough to pull the car over, so I guess we're good. That does us no good. Define a line for the police officers to not cross. If they cross the line, throw the case out. It's stopping it at the local level before it gets to the national media with a murder, with a death. These are small symptoms and small things we can look at. The media only spots like these big, sexy cases. Grape talks about hammer professionalism in the academy and at the end of each roll call briefing. All right. So I think professionalism is hammered in at the academy all the time. I don't think we have to worry about it there. That where I teach and where I went through the academy, there's no question professionalism is being sunk into those skulls for sure. But the really interesting part here is that Grape mentioned is at the end of roll call briefing every shift. So what he's talking about there, that roll call briefing is kind of one of those things that you hear about in the movies or TV shows. You may not know what it is. Let's talk about what that is so we can have that discussion, and Grape makes a really good point. When you go to work, and let's say you work at a police department that works 12-hour shifts, you're going to work 2 days on, 2 days off, 3 days on, 3 days off. 2 on, 2 off, 3 on, 3 off. These shift briefings happen on your first day back. So today's Sunday, let's say it's my long weekend. So I had Friday, Saturday, Sunday off. Let's say I'm a police officer, I'm working patrol. I would have Friday, Saturday, Sunday off every other weekend. 3-day weekend. Pretty cool schedule, by the way. I really like the patrol schedule. So the tomorrow, when I go to work, if I'm working day shift, I'm going to go to work and I have briefing at 6 a.m. at the substation headquarters. This is where the sheriff's office would do it. So when I worked day shift, I worked up in Apopka, which is a city north of Orlando, northwest of Orlando. And so I was assigned to that general Apopka area. And we had a substation that was kind of part of a mini courthouse, a government building in that city. And we would meet there, both squads, every morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. We'd BS a little bit, have our coffee, talk trash about our few days off, go over all the stuff that happened during the few days we had off. And that's called shift briefing. Gives the sergeant a time to give updates about what's going on, policy changes, review your emails, sign this form, all that type of administrative stuff that you would think that would go on with police work, in addition to hip pocket training. So some supervisors are really, really good about doing training during these shift briefings. Other supervisors, not so much. You're lucky if you get them to show up. So the squad I was on in Apopka, the sister sergeant, really big SWAT guy, instructor at the academy, he is into training nonstop. We were always, every single week, we were doing, an hour-long training session. We'd, hey, empty your guns out. all bullets, all magazines, all weapons, all knives in the trunk. We're going to go to this parking lot of the school and we're going to practice somebody coming at you. We're going to pretend this pencil's a knife and we're going to practice the 21-foot rule. So this is just a weekly training we're doing. We would say, hey, go meet up over here. We'd sit there for an hour and we would have 2 people that would handle the zone. It's kind of like right now. I'm doing a live stream when not many people are here. We would do this training when not many people are around. Not much is going on from an activity standpoint. So 1 or 2 police officers, if a call comes in, alarm call or some nonsense like that, they can go take that call while the rest of the 10 or 12 guys are doing 20 or 30 minutes worth of training. And that type of training is what Grape was referring to, is if we shift that training towards mandatory professionalism and de-escalation. I don't know. I don't know if that's realistic or not. I don't know. If I'm a police supervisor, I didn't elect to go up through the ranks. I instead decided to go deep into DUI. I guess there's a couple different ways. You can niche down into a topic or you can go up through the ranks. And I decided to niche down. I became an expert in DUI. I never promoted up through the ranks. But if I would have promoted up through the ranks, I'd imagine I would be the type of guy as a sergeant teaching young officers at my weekly training officer safety stuff. So I would be teaching that 21-foot rule. I think would be the default, and the professionalism would fall by the wayside. I'm just giving an honest assessment there. I can say, teach professionalism. Yeah, I would do that for sure. I'm just giving an honest assessment